This is The Truth of the Times, Episode 6, Son of the Sun. This series is not your typical Zeitgeist response. It's not out to debunk the whole film or quote 100 Bible verses or explain why the Masons, Satanists, and hippies are out to get you. This series is made especially for people who watch the film and wonder, where did all of this info come from, and how much of it is true? People who need to see the very root of truth, like people from that Show Me State. Now why not just hit the big points, take out Zeitgeist and a ball of flames? Well, that's not really education. Just like Zeitgeist doesn't really teach you anything until about the second movie when you finally see a real academic book. Zeitgeist throws information at you and expects you to get like the sheep you are. Real education shows you how to do something by example, gives you a place to start, and after holding your hand for a while, lets go and gives you the chance to learn something on your own. Each episode will only cover a few pieces of the puzzle at a time. Why? Because before you can see the big picture, you have to divide the facts from the fiction. So, follow along and you might just learn something, or even better, maybe you'll leave a comment and teach me something.
The Son, with its life-giving and saving qualities, was personified as a representative of the unseen creator or God.
As was discussed in episode 4, the idea of sun gods coexisted next to a lot of other types of gods. Only for a short period of time in Egypt was there one lonesome sun god. Pharaoh Amenhotep IV, who ruled about 1348 BC, praised only one god exclusively during his reign, Aten, the sun disk. Eventually, he declared Aten was the only god. For this claim, Peter Joseph cites The Book of the Sun by Marsilio Ficino, 1494. Marsilio Ficino here claims that Plato called the Son of God the Son of God, which doesn't sound the same in Latin at all, making the English translation a bit confusing if you don't read it. So, for this argument, the sun S-U-N will be referred to as the big star, and the sun S-O-N will be referred to as child. Now this is kind of weird here, because Ficino is trying to make Plato fit into a more Christian sort of mold for his own purposes. In Plato's Republic, there is an allegory of the big star and how a man comes out of this cave he's lived in his whole life might view it. However, the metaphors presented in the Republic and the fact that Plato was a pagan don't seem to coincide at all with what Ficino is trying to contrive. Basically, Ficino is saying that Plato saw the big star as something made by God. But Ficino says in this statement here that the big star is clearly not Jesus, the child of God, rather something that is of God. In a sense, it echoes God's qualities of illuminating the mind as the world is illuminated. But those were not Plato's words. One has to ask, why does Peter Joseph cite this paragraph, which directly conflicts with the parallel in the film that he's trying to defend? Probably because both Sun S-U-N and Sun S-O-N appear together here in the English translation of Ficino, but it's pure coincidence. Plato does not use the phrase Son of God ever in the Republic. He does talk about whether or not Apollo was the son of a god, and that is about as close as it gets. In short, Peter Joseph cites an author who seems to be misquoting Plato, and opposes the parallels in the film to boot. Maybe there is something else that Plato said that I missed. But Ficino does not say where he got this quote. No matter what he thought about the sun, Plato is a single philosopher with a very unique view of the world. He does not represent the countless idol-worshipping polytheists of his time. Clearly, this was not the norm of the secular population with their own pantheon of constellations and stories.
God's Son, the light of the world.
So far we've shown that this sun and sun connection does not work out in Latin, eliminating the idea from the entire Roman Empire. It doesn't work very well in some other languages of the ancient world either. Just for fun, let's take a look. In ancient Greek, sun S-O-N could be Anax, Danaoi, Dardanos, Dioskoroi, Genethlan, Paes, Huios, Ithegenes, Technosus, or Thessaidai. Sun S-U-N was Ilios, and they even had a word specifically for sun god, Helios. So that eliminates pretty much all ancient philosophers and the New Testament from this sun-sun comparison. In ancient Aramaic, sun S-O-N could be Babne, Babra, Babre, Babnoi, Bar, Bilidai, Ra, Iledai, etc. There are so many variants of the word sun in ancient Aramaic that I won't even have time to read them all. Here's a link if you're interested. Now, fortunately, there are not so many for the sun, and sadly, none of them match up. Sun S-U-N, B'Shemsha, Deshemsha, Oshemsha, and Shemshe. In ancient Hebrew, the word sun S-O-N was Ben. Sun S-U-N, Shemesh. This is very close to Aramaic, and once again, it doesn't match, and negates any correspondence to this idea in the Judaic Christian culture. let's look at ancient Egyptian. Sun S-O-N was Sa, and Sun S-U-N was Riha or Ra. The Egyptians also used another word, Benti, for the son of the sun god, which also could have been used for baboon. Ancient Babylonian or Akkadian. Sun S-O-N is Aplu, and Sun S-U-N was Halos, Nifu, and Samsatu. Their sun god was specifically called Shamash, very similar again to Hebrew and Aramaic. Now let's look at English. In English, these two words just sound alike, separated only by spelling. Now, Sun S-O-N stems from the Proto-Germanic word sunus, which split up into the Old English and Old German sunu, sonur in Old Norse, and son in Old Danish and Swedish. This all happened all around 450 AD to 1000 AD. Going even further back to 4 BC, sunus comes from a Sanskrit word, su, which is the root involving to give birth, and probably existed as sunu in its earliest form in Proto-Indo-European language, which is over 5,000 years old. As for Sun S-U-N, the Old English form is feminine. Yes, English used to have feminine and masculine forms. It was Sune, and the oldest Proto-Indo-European form of it is either Suen, Swen, Sawel, or Suven, Sven, or Savel, depending on how you pronounce it. So, here is how Peter Joseph arrived at this comparison. Let's take a look at the source that he quotes. This is taken from a book called The Analysis of Ancient Mythology by Jacob Bryant. And although Peter Joseph says it's published in 1979 and cites only pages 34 through 35, it was actually originally published back in the 1700s. And he cites information surpassing page 35 into page 40 and so on. Here it says the most common name for the sun was San and Sun, expressed also as Zan, Zon, and Zan. It is mentioned by Hesychius that the end in Hercules, by which is always meant the chief deity, was Dorsanes. The name Dorsanes is an abridgment of Adorsan or Adosanes, that is Ador's soul, the Lord of Light. It was a title confirmed upon Ham, etc. Bryant notes that the Egyptian priests were called Sonchin or Son Kohen, priests of the sun. Thus, the English word sun is not a false cognate with sun, and it is truthfully said that the Son of God is the Son of God. The sun-sun connection can also be found in the Indian language. Whoa. So that's a bit different than what we just went over. Now let's check the source and see where this information comes from. Finally, you can see here a writer who is citing some sources correctly, but so far this doesn't at all correspond with any dictionary of ancient languages I have read, which is why Mr. Bryant had to formulate a new system, I suppose. He also does not cite the most crucial point, in which he claims that san is the most common form of sun. Now, if you just said son in ancient Greek, that would have meant yours. In modern Greek, san means as. He cites an inscription in the Ionian dialect and then changes the spelling for some unknown reason to tell us how it's really said. He also cites a manuscript by Hesychius, which underwent substantial alterations over the centuries, but he still uses it to support his version of Babylonian. But Hesychius wrote specifically about rare forms of words, so clearly, even if all these forms were valid, they were not used in the vernacular language. There is no clear connection made in the citation for how these rare words finally came about to influence the English language. In fact, there is ample linguistic evidence to the contrary. Now let's look at the Egyptian side. Bryant claims that Son Kohen is Egyptian for Egyptian priest. I couldn't locate the original authorship he cites, but no need, because Kohen is Hebrew for priest. In ancient Hebrew, it was said Kohen, and Sana meant hate. Clearly, this work from the 1700s has some errors, drawing information from the wrong language entirely. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time, but join us for our next episode, where we continue to dissect some of Peter Joseph's more questionable sources.